Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. Today is a one-day event dedicated to the tablet space with a couple of very simple goals. We're all here to learn about the space, get wowed by some new technology, and steal ideas for our own apps. So at least that's my goals. This is a new style of event for me. Most of the events I've done have been very, much larger, less intimate. The TechCrunch 50 event and the launch event, where 50 companies launch brand new things, and there's 2,000 people. The point of this event is to really have all creators in the room. So let me just take a quick poll. How many people here have an app in the store? Okay, so I think that speaks volumes. And actually, how many people here are founders of their own company? Right. Mission accomplished. So what we tried to, wow, I'm impressed. What we tried to do is find you people on LinkedIn, on Stack Overflow, on GitHub, on AngelList, all the different places where creators hang out, and have an event without the focus being venture capital, angel investing, headhunters, et cetera. So this is creators and for creators. And yesterday I was in the rehearsals, and the stuff you're going to see today is truly cutting edge, the best of the best. And we've created a format that I hope works really well, which is folks are going to come up for 3, 4, 5 minutes and show what they've built. And they're going to do that very quickly. And then they're going to say what they've learned, their big takeaway from building tablet apps. And then all 5 of them will come back on stage, and we'll do Q&A. And it will be like a roundtable. You guys will be participating in the Q&A as much as the folks on the stage. And we're going to just pound through 5 sessions with 5 people in each. And I thought a nice way to start, oh yeah, and by the way, just some quick thank you to our friends at Bing and Microsoft for hosting us today. Really wouldn't be able to do the event without them. Big round of applause for them. And I'll do some other thank yous. Actually, Room 77 did the breakfast, correct? Yes, I got that right. Room 77 did the breakfast. So thank you to Room 77, which is a very cool company that won a bunch of awards at the launch conference. Basically, go to any room. It's basically like SeatGeek, but for hotel rooms. You can go. Has anybody used Room 77 yet? Go ahead and check it out. It's like mind-blowing. The same experience you would have going to SeatGeek for the first time, or like picking your own seats in a movie theater. You can look at the room that you're about to rent on your vacation and see the view from the window. I'm not kidding. It's really that cool. So I thought a great way to start the event would be to have Ryan Block, who is the co-founder of Gadget, GT.com, have him give us an overview of the state of tablet hardware, so we get that out of the way at the beginning and have a little discussion about that. He also was one of the co-founders of Engadget and the editor-in-chief for a while. So please join me in welcoming Ryan Block.
Hello, check. Do I have a mic? My mic? Hello? All right, sweet. Actually, so I wanted to ask, obviously a lot of people here with apps in the store. How many people here with iOS apps specifically? So everybody. And then iOS only, no other platforms? Okay, prepare to have your visions reaffirmed. So Jason asked me to talk about tablets, and that's what we're going to do. So this is the joke about tablets, of course. No small expectations what they're supposed to do for us. They don't exactly come from humble roots. I actually think the humble roots of the tablet really begin with the PDA. To me, that is the spiritual genesis of the tablets we use today. I think if you kind of trace back the lineage, which we'll do real briefly here, this is really where it started. This is where having a smart device in your hand began. This is where mobile software really made sense from a consumer standpoint. So, PDAs actually had a pretty good run. They were used, they carried us through the 90s, so about a decade. And they started to taper off when smartphones came to the fore in the early aughts. And then, of course, they evolved into tablets. So you can kind of see how with companies like Palm, who were really, at the forefront of the PDA, they eventually evolved into the Trio, which was, one of the first true smartphones. And then the Trio eventually gave way to devices like BlackBerry and iPhone. And then, of course, now every major tablet device runs on a platform that was originally purposed as a smartphone platform. And the funny thing about this is Apple actually had really humble roots in the portable space. We think of them now as being the market-leading platform for tablets and smartphones, but it really wasn't always this way. So I think we all remember this.
Children, the times, they are becoming quite different. Test scores are at an all-time low, so I've come up with these academic alerts. You will receive one as soon as your grades start to slip in any subject. This way, your parents won't have to wait until report card time to punish you.
How innovative. I like it.
Hey, Dolph, take a memo on your Newton. Beat up Martin. Bah! Yes!
The fact was, it wasn't ready. We weren't ready. The whole ecosystem was just not really ready yet. And so for as many PDAs as sold, we just weren't there. But there were actually some tablets in between the PDA and the smartphone. They just didn't really look like what we think of tablets as being. This is what they look like. It started with Windows XP Tablet Edition. They were very expensive, very fragile PCs. Many of them were like this, convertibles, although some were slates. And they were all, basically PCs where the pen kind of took the place of the mouse. And, it's strange to think of it, but now we can actually see, about a decade later, these were introduced in 2002, that Microsoft was a real pioneer in the tablet space. This was their vision for what tablet computing would look like. Actually looks a little bit familiar. So, they were close, but they missed the mark. They didn't quite get there. And then a lot changed. Now, before we get to the tablet stuff, I actually want to tell a quick story about Alan Kay. This guy is, one of the greats. And besides being a pioneer in programming and UI development, he happened to be one of Steve Jobs' heroes. And back in 1984, when the Mac was introduced, he said that the Mac was the first PC worth criticizing, which, I think really hit home with Steve. So flash forward 20 years later, Apple introduces the iPhone, and Steve invites Alan Kay to the iPhone launch event. And afterwards, he went up to Alan and said, so is the iPhone the first smartphone worth criticizing? This is what Alan says. Make the screen 5 by 8 inches and you'll rule the world. So, 3 years later. Whoop. So maybe he was right. So let's talk about what the world looks like today. I think we all kind of know that it's really been the iPad and an increasingly long series of other product footnotes. We've got some numbers here. So these are numbers pulled directly from our gadget users. These are what people have actually bought in the year 2011 and put on their gadget have lists. This is from thousands of data points. And it's really stunning. I mean, this the green slice, that's the original iPad, the 2-year-old iPad. If you add up every other tablet product on the market today, every device ever sold from Palm, Android, anybody not Apple, that doesn't even add up to the 2-year-old iPad in 2011. It's pretty outstanding to me. I couldn't actually believe this when I pulled these numbers. And I think it's also bears mentioning that these are actually kind of deflated against Apple because in 2010, they were basically the only tablet company on the market. This is just 2011 numbers. So this is what the platforms look like. Again, it's just really insane. I mean, it kind of looks like Windows 20 years ago. So Apple just announced they shipped over 40 million iPads so far. which means that if you look at every single Android tablet ever shipped, that's roughly equivalent to the number of iPhone 4Ss they sold last weekend. It's really mind-boggling. These are Gartner's numbers. They really look pretty similar to ours. So we know that we're not totally off base here. So the question is now, why should I buy this tablet instead of an iPad? I don't know if this has been answered yet. And I think for many of the people in the room, why should I build on this platform instead of building on iOS for the iPad? And what does the future hold? I don't really know. I mean, I can definitely say that I think Palm is down for the count. Microsoft, obviously, again, pioneered the tablet space, and they had to actually go back to the drawing board, and now it's a core feature of Windows 8, and Windows 8 is going to run on embedded devices. But underneath, it's still going to be Windows. Google just announced Ice Cream Sandwich. That's a pretty big launch. It's got a font, a new font. Awesome. And then you got the Kindle Fire, which I actually think is the best competitor we've seen so far. And it's not even playing Apple's game. And maybe that's why it's such a strong competitor. This is coming out next month, so we'll see how it does at $200. So I'm going to close it and then go to questions. But I think we can kind of all agree so far in the last couple of years, nobody's been able to compete. And I was trying to break this down. Why is this? Why can't anyone touch the iPad yet? Apple's not suffering death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, as many products as there are out there, they're doing fine. It's not a specs war. They don't need LTE modules and ultra high resolution displays to make the iPad a success. So what product can touch the core criteria of the iPad, which to me is having a simple, beautiful, user-centric UI, a very sleek design, a massive ecosystem of software and accessories, hardware, aggressive pricing that leverages economies of scale. That's something that really Apple can do better than anyone today. And it answers the question, why should I get this instead of an iPad? I was thinking about all these things. I really only came up with one answer. It's the Sabre tablet. Build for this. It's the future. So that's tablets in 2011. Thank you.
Wondering if you could unpack the Kindle Fire, the reason you believe Kindle Fire could be a viable coexister, perhaps, or maybe carve out its own piece of the ecosystem. It's selling particularly well. Do you have any statistics on its sales? And is it just the price that makes it so compelling?
Everybody hear that question from Jason? No? Yes? Okay. I think the Kindle Fire is going to work well because, again, it answers the question of what is the purpose of this device as an alternative to the iPad? What does it do that I can't get on the iPad? I mean, technically, not a whole lot. If you really look at it on a feature-by-feature basis, iPad does really everything. But it does it at more than half the cost, and it's got a very clear message. Use this to consume media. So to me, the Kindle represents a new lower class of, not lower class, but a new class of lower-end tablets that will actually expand the reach of tablet consumers. I mean, we all know if you look at the adoption curve, the lower the price, the more units get sold. Right now, the price, at the base iPad is $499, as we've all seen. So you cut that in half and then some, you're going to see real sales. You look at the HP touchpad, for example. Nobody bought it. Nobody really wanted it. They killed it. They canned it. They made it $99, and then they couldn't keep them in stock. That's not to say that we should all kind of look to a model where we're picking the bones of all these companies that are doing poorly. But that is a really dramatic price drop from $500 to $200. And even if the Fire is not that great, I still think it's going to sell a lot just on the Kindle brand alone.
And what are the chances that Apple responds to the Fire by putting out a smaller footprint tablet, or do you think they already have that in the works? And do you think they're going to drop the price of the iPad to compete with the Fire, or they don't care?
So one of Apple's strategies that I think is really smart is that if you look at the iPhone, they've been selling the previous year's iPhone back a couple of years now. They've gone back 2 years to the 3GS at reduced prices. They killed that opportunity with themselves on the iPad 1. They could have continued selling the iPad 1 at a much more aggressive price, but because there was nobody else on the market, they didn't really need to do that. So they just went straight to the iPad 2, and now they have their kind of premium product offering at starting at $500. So it makes it really challenging for them to have a lower priced model in the immediate future. And they've said numerous times they're not interested in the 7-inch tablet space. It's half the screen size. It's not really what they want to do. Obviously, they're going to say that until they launch the product. But I don't know. I don't know if they want to do that. I don't know if that's what interests them. I think that philosophically, they might really like being in the place they're at, the 10-inch and the 3.8-inch.
And what do you hear about the iPad 3? Is it going to have solar panels and a digital tuner built in?
Yes, and it will also do your laundry. And actually, Siri could probably take care of your laundry for you if they add that in.
And what's the impact of Siri going to be on app developers, et cetera? I mean, one of the things I was struck by when you press it, it sends you to Google Maps when you ask for a restaurant, but not, I have Yelp loaded on my phone, but it didn't take me to Yelp. Is there going to be the ability to say, I want restaurants to go to Zagat or Yelp? Are you going to be able to route Siri requests to a provider that you choose?
So, I mean, the first thing I thought when I saw the Siri launch at the Apple event, I was there, was when are we going to get an API for this? I think that actually poses a lot of serious challenges, because let's say you've got 3 or 4 Twitter clients installed on your phone, or 3 or 4 of any kind of thing that are slightly different, and you say tweet this, or map this, or find me a restaurant. I mean, for me, I've got like OpenTable and Google Maps and Yelp, and there's so many mechanisms that I can employ to find a restaurant. Which one do I find? So then Siri has to maybe come back and ask you, which app do you want to use? I mean, I think that there's just some logistical issues that you don't have to deal with in an explicit interface where you were telling it every single step of the way what to do. But I think they're going to do it. I mean, I think they have to, and that will actually change the way that we think about apps, because now the app doesn't have a UI until the system has requested it.
Questions from the audience? Maybe we'll take 1 or 2 questions.
Right. Andrew Donahoe, the Texas Observer, and Retriever. My question is about screen resolution. The biggest difference between the 3GS and the 4 is the screen resolution. Yeah, there are plenty of other things, but the screen is the most notable thing. It's presumably will be the difference between the Kindle Fire and the iPads. Do you have any prognostication when we're going to see larger screens with high resolution?
Larger screens, like larger than 10 inches?
iPad size, larger than Kindle with high resolution.
So Apple was able to accomplish the Retina display fairly easily on the iPhone 4, because when they quadrupled the resolution, multiplied it by 2 in each direction, it was still a manageable resolution. It was still less than XGA, which is what we were all using on our computers 10 plus years ago. So the hardware existed. The panel is actually still the most expensive part of the iPhone 4 and 4S, the display. But they were able to pull that off. The technology actually does not really exist right now, both from a panel standpoint and from a video standpoint, to quadruple the resolution of an iPad, which is why I actually wrote about this about maybe a year ago. I prognosticated that there wasn't going to be a Retina display iPad 2 or iPad 3, because if you just look at the raw numbers, an iPad with quadruple the resolution is a far higher resolution than what you get on most laptops, and that requires serious hardware. So from the panel standpoint, it's going to be unbelievably expensive. From the video hardware standpoint, it's going to consume a ton of power. And from the battery standpoint, there are laws of physics we have to abide by in order to make all these things work with the continually improving battery life that Apple likes to show. So I don't see it happening anytime in the next maybe year, maybe 2013. I mean, it's a vague possibility in 2012, but I haven't really seen it yet.
Kindle Amazon's probably losing 20, 30, 40 bucks on the Kindle in terms of hardware from what I've read. One, is that accurate, do you think? And two, with Google buying Motorola, most people speculate they're going to divest the hardware business. Do you think they might actually keep the hardware business and start doing subsidized hardware, end-to-end solutions like Amazon is doing?
Hard to say. It's a lot easier for Amazon to make money than it is for Google because Amazon sells a lot of media. That's what they do. That's where they make their money. That's why they got into the Kindle business to begin with, is because they knew that if they were able to control from the bottom to the top how ebooks are bought and sold, that they could maximize returns there. Google does not really have a cohesive media sales strategy. I mean, they do sell some music, they do have Google Music, but none of these things I think come together in any real competitive way. So it's going to be very hard for them to make up that money. We also know that the Google app marketplace basically sells no apps. I mean, people are not making money. They're not cutting billion-dollar checks every quarter to developers. I mean, this is just kind of well known. So I think it's a much tougher proposition for Google to dump their hardware and hope to make it up later on software and media.
Search. What about for search? I mean, just as a moat strategy to just make sure. I mean, Siri clearly is a threat to search. You would agree, or some queries?
Some queries.
Some queries. Yeah. So they lose 10, 20% market share. Could start, in terms of search to Siri. Could be meaningful?
I mean, the ARPU on search is still really good for Google, and they've been able to make Android profitable, or so they claim, but I don't think it's enough to not only subsidize all of Android for free, which is what they do now, but then also subsidize another $50 or $100 for every device sold. Google could do it, but they're going to have to go into their coffers to make it happen, and they're not going to see that money come back. They might do it just because they really want to stay competitive, but I don't think that they're going to be able to make that money back.
Let's hear it for Ryan Block for giving us a great overview. Well done. And Phil, maybe you could come up.